We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots more trade talk around Canuck captain Quinn Hughes. He was certainly a hot topic in NHL news circles. Here today, we'll talk about the latest there, as well as around the Canucks. Who's calling the shots? Could we see a regime change? Is Quinn Hughes the first domino to fall? Will it be others? Where could Hughes go? We'll discuss all the latest around that scenario. Lots to unpack there. Plus, we have some other trade talk around the Leafs, the Habs, the Oilers, and the Sabres in Montreal. The recall of goaltender Jacob Fowler has been talking again about potential goalie trade and changes within that position for the Canadians. Plus, we have some signings, including Fabbri being back in the NHL. NHL history was made last night as well, with a lot of late game time goals. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video, lots to unpack around the Hughes situation, which we'll get into here in a few minutes. But first up, we saw some NHL history last night. It was the first time that we've ever seen 4 game-tying goals, all on different games, of course, all featured within the final 15 seconds of play. Before that, it was the most we'd ever seen in one night was 2. So it was a lot of games going right down to the wire. Obviously, it ended up with a lot of overtime because of it. We saw Beckett Seneca tie the game for the Ducks against the Penguins. I think there was 1 second on the clock. McDavid did it for the Oilers against the Sabres, I think, with another 1 second left. So it was certainly, not only were the 4 goals in the final 15 seconds, a few of them were with only like a tick or 2 left on the clock. So it was... It was a fun night of hockey, not going to lie. There was lots of interesting, close-knit games, lots of overtime, so it was certainly great from a fan entertainment perspective for sure. But it was interesting to find out that had never actually happened before in NHL history. Lots of other news to get to. We'll start first with a few signings, then we'll jump into some recalls, roster moves, injury updates, that kind of stuff. We had the LA Kings today announced they've signed one of their prospects, and that's Wojtek Sihar, who was a 59th overall pick from the 2025 NHL draft. The forward's currently playing over in Czechia. No announcement or plans of when he's moving to North America, but I would suspect that could be a possibility for next season. So he gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Obviously, they've been pleased with how he's played so far since the draft. And Fabbri makes his return to the NHL, and it's expected he's going to go right into the Blues lineup as a regular for at least a short term here. See how he does. But the St. Louis Blues have signed Fabbri. Of course, the Blues are where he started his career. He's played with a few other teams, including stops along the way with the Red Wings and the Ducks. But Fabbri, of course, was a high pick. Had a great run in junior. Was a when he was really young, he was like kind of known as more of a prolific goal scorer. But obviously, Fabbri has been bit hard by the injury bug during his career. Several knee injuries, especially in knee surgeries, certainly derailed him. But he started the year as a free agent, not getting a contract after after a number of years consecutively in the NHL. But he gets a 1-year, 2-way deal for the remainder of the season with St. Louis. He'll earn league minimum NHL salary, $775 at the NHL level. If he is demoted to the AHL, he will earn $300,000 for those games. So he was on a tryout before, like he ended up going to the AHL on a tryout, and then he turned that into quickly an NHL 2-way contract. And because of their injuries, especially with Jordan Kyrou being out, the Blues decided to give him an opportunity and bring him in right away. So Kyrou's hurt. I mean, we saw Texier depart here recently. So, a few other injuries and whatnot. So the Blues are going to give him a chance, and we'll see how things go for Fabbri. A bunch of other news and updates around other teams today when it comes to roster moves, injury updates, etc. Apparently in Vancouver, Thatcher Demko is ready to make his return. Of course, every time he's been hurt, it seems like it's kind of drug on for a while, but he is back, or expected to be back in the next game for the Canucks. Bad news in Buffalo, of course, Jason Zucker, who had been one of their best players and probably one of their most, if not the most productive forward in recent weeks, did get hurt and is going to be out an extended period of time is all they call it. We'll say it's long-term, but I mean, even long-term could just be a few weeks. We don't really know more than the fact that it's a lower body injury and an extended time was the comments from the coaching staff. Victor Hedman also left last night's game for the Lightning as they handled the Montreal Canadiens relatively well. It was a bit of a one-sided game, we'll call it, which kind of led to some other news in Montreal, which we'll get to in a sec here. But obviously Hedman was injured. He left the game, didn't return. We're still waiting on further updates on his status. The Senators return Ollie Lycksell back to the AHL. They get ready to head out on I think it's a 3-game road trip, I believe. So Lycksell appears to be staying back and playing in the AHL. And in Pittsburgh, they return Sam Poulin back to the NHL. Now, as I mentioned, we'll talk about some Montreal roster moves, and then we'll talk about how that has stirred up conversations about trades and some rumors again around this team. Of course, like I said, Montreal had not a great game. They got slaughtered last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and to be honest, the Lightning are a really good team. So the fact that they lost isn't so much, the end of the world. They've had a pretty good season. They're in good shape standings-wise, but it was a bad loss, no doubt. And no team would be happy. I don't care, if you're playing the best team in the NHL or not, or one of the top couple teams. Like, you don't need to lose that bad. Parity in the NHL should allow pretty much most teams to at least compete and have it closer. And when you get skunked that bad, it's never good. But we learned from Montreal today that Jake Evans is going to be away from the team for at least one game. They called up personal reasons, but there are some out there claiming that he has a doctor, like a specialist or appointment, and he's seeking an opinion on something. So he shouldn't be out too long, but depending on how things go, maybe. But for Evans, he is technically away from the team for at least the next game. But they've recalled defenseman Adam Engstrom, forward Owen Beck, and the biggest news of all, goaltender Jacob Fowler. By many people think that Fowler, of course, could be the goaltender of the future. Now, of course, Jacob Fowler is expected to get the start in their next game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, of course, Carey Price, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Patrick Waugh as well. Both also, their last two guys that were really franchise goaltenders. I mean, they've had some other good ones in between those guys, don't get me wrong. But those two guys had the longest run in the last, 30 to 40 years as being, well, really, like everybody, if you look at since Patrick Waugh became the starting goaltender, he had obviously a long run as an all-star, top-quality goaltender until his departure. And like I said, had some good ones in between. I know Jose Theodore comes to mind. And obviously, Price comes along. Obviously, it started off as him and Halak, but eventually Halak gets moved, Price takes over. Those two guys are, two of the greatest goalies in franchise history. Both started their NHL careers against the Penguins. Fowler will have that same distinction, according to what we're seeing out of Montreal reports here today. So could it be the beginning of a bright young star? Is he ready for full-time NHL action? He's done well so far in the AHL. Obviously had a great run as a college goaltender while he was there. Like I said, a lot of people have faith in him and believe that there's a strong potential. He's their goaltender of the future. Now, when we talked about trade rumors in the past number of weeks around the Habs and the goaltending situation specifically, we've talked about the fact that many people think that Montreal was looking for an upgrade because of the inconsistent play this year of Samuel Montembeault. Of course, Montembeault has been a pretty good goalie for them. They picked him up on waivers a number of years back from Florida. They didn't pay anything to get him. He's been great for the most part. He has had his struggles this year. There's no doubt. Even if you look to the time when they had the three-headed monster goaltender situation with Montembeault, Jake Allen before he was moved, and Primo, I think to some degree all those guys kind of struggled at times as well because it was difficult for them to find a rhythm and really kind of get on a roll, so to speak. But he's been good to the point where he's bought himself some rope here. But I think the Canadians are concerned. They see an opportunity to not only get into the playoffs again, but to take things further, improve. They want to continue to get better here. So I said recently, to talk about some speculation around a Montembeault trade, wouldn't be shocking, but I said before they do that, I really believed that they were going to bring Fowler up first because the answer might be internal. And if they do decide to trade Montembeault, it's going to be because they have confidence in Fowler as the option to run with it with Dobush as taking over here on this tandem. And then another scenario that I said could play out is if Fowler turns out to be ready, then they could move Montembeault without needing a goalie back, right away. Or maybe they bring in more of a veteran depth option. No, it's not somebody who's expected to be the starter, but maybe like can play third string insurance. Well, but they also have Kakinen in the minors too. So maybe they don't even do that. They don't necessarily have to have a goalie back if they're confident that Fowler can be the guy at the NHL level, unless they're bringing in another goaltender, like I said, who can go play in Laval with Kakinen and kind of spell off and get trade off with Fowler. Or if it turns out that they see Fowler play a few games and they're like, yeah, you know what, we still have a lot of faith in him for the future. Not quite ready yet. We think he needs more seasoning in the AHL. Maybe they move Montembeault for another guy with more experience who could be, maybe not anybody on a long-term deal or big money, too big of money like we talked about, Jordan Binnington being an option maybe if he becomes available. There's other names out there too, right? But we'll see. Obviously, I think their first foremost here is to see how Fowler does. But it's certainly piqued up a lot of people's interest, got people talking about a Habs goalie trade again, and I do firmly believe if Fowler looks good and plays well in the first couple of opportunities here, that could spell the end of Montembeault's time in Montreal. It wouldn't be shocking news. Like, why would they, if Fowler plays well and gets them some wins, they have no reason to not keep going back to him. And if Montembeault is just going to end up sitting and not see himself in a big role anymore, it kind of makes sense to consider a trade. So if they can find one, of course, it makes sense for everybody involved. So I do think Fowler's recall and potential emergence here could spell the end of Montembeault, but we have to see how everything plays out. But we'll see if one thing leads to another here down the road. Now, as I mentioned, we saw the Oilers and Sabres play last night. Kind of got people talking again about a potential trade between those clubs. Of course, the Sabres end up pulling out an overtime victory after Connor McDavid pulled out some McDavid magic in the dying seconds to get the game tied, the second goal of the game. We saw another blunder from Evan Bouchard in overtime early on in the first minute to give the Sabres the win. Alex Tuch takes advantage of a bad giveaway by Bouchard, and game over, just like that. And a lot of people have talked about Alex Tuch being a player who a lot of people think would be a terrific fit in Edmonton. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got some skill, he can score. Could be a great compliment for their top six, and could even be a guy who plays well with McDavid, especially when they don't have him and Draisaitl together. So, of course, Alex Tuch, we know, is currently with the Sabres. He's a hometown kid there. He grew up in the Buffalo area. He seemed quite excited when he was traded there from Vegas in an Eichel trade. But things have never really come together for the Sabres. I mean, unless something drastically changes here in the next couple of weeks, it's expected that the Sabres are going to have to kind of, again, retool, do some selling, reshape this team once again, in that where he's not signed. And it sounds like to me, from everything we've heard from all the different NHL reporters and insiders covering that situation, is that Alex Tuch, I think, absolutely has some level of interest to remain in Buffalo. But I think if he's going to remain there, they're going to have to overpay a bit, and they're going to have to look to some of the other contracts that have come up and see how he compares. He's going to be in double digits in the million. It's going to be 10 plus for sure to keep him to be a Sabre. And there hasn't been a lot of chatter and rumors around extension talks or where things sit. So it's kind of led people think that, if they don't have an agreement in place and we're getting closer to the trade deadline and the team's spiraling and out of it again and bottom of the standings, maybe he gets moved and really is not the perfect scenario. Edmonton, so we'll see. I do think the fit is terrific. What the trade package could look like, that's another question. Obviously, the Oilers are in a very tight cap situation, so they'd have to send some money back to the Sabres. But we'll see. I think that it could be a great match, but how it works out is difficult to say. Now, a quick note on the Leafs, then we're going to get into Quinn Hughes. There was some reports about Calle Jarnkrok's future in Toronto. A couple of different European outlets suggesting that he may be heading back to Sweden, which obviously to some degree might be good for the Leafs to get under another contract without having to do a trade or do anything that's going to affect them negatively from a roster or cap perspective. But so far, none of those reports have been able to be substantiated and confirmed by any North American media. So again, we'll see. I'm not really certain on the future of Jarnkrok with the Leafs. Long term, not sure there's going to be a fit there, but for the remainder of his contract, we can't confirm, but there are some, like I said, reports that suggest that he was heading to Sweden and had a place to play and something lined up either for next season or maybe even for like the second half of this season, but none of those reports can be confirmed just yet. So I'm not sure there's truth to it, but it's wanted to mention it, or it has been out there making its rounds through social media. Now, as I mentioned, Quinn Hughes and the Canucks getting tons of attention again here today. It seems like every pretty well podcast, news program, Sportsnet, TSN, everybody talking about Quinn Hughes. And everybody seems that it has weighed in here. Pretty much every Sportsnet and insider, TSN insider, there's an article in the Globe and Mail. Like, it's the hot topic. And I don't really hear anybody at all saying that, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to stay. Nobody's saying that. A lot of people feel that he's a goner. It's just a matter of when. Obviously some people were saying, I think it was Patterson. I think it was Jeff Patterson talking, that he's the one that said he thinks Quinn Hughes looks like defeated. That was the word he used. And I was like, you know what? He kind of does. He had a great streak there for a stretch of, was it 3 or 4 games? We put up like 10 assists and he was doing really well. Then like the last number, 9, 10 games, like his point production is almost gone, almost non-existent. Makes the odd play, sure, that goes, okay, that looked good. The real Quinn Hughes is still in there, but it's only showing up sporadically and not really leading to a lot of team success. When you hear him talk after the games, he's not shying away from the media. I'll give him credit for, talking to the media when there's so many rumors around him, but he just looks checked out to me. That's my take. Maybe I'm not right on that, but that's where I feel he's at. There was some speculation already that he had already sold his condo that he had back a few months ago. It was before the season. That was a rumor in the summer. Even head coach Adam Foote today made comments during his media availability. He was asked about some of the stuff, and he admitted that all the rampant rumors around Quinn Hughes being traded, it's been such a hot topic, just buzzing through all in the hockey media landscape, that it's crept into the room, and it's having an effect on the team now. And you have to wonder, like I said, with a guy that's your captain and your best player, speculated to be on his way out of town, you got to think a lot of these other guys are thinking, well, geez, do I want to be here too? Now they do have a lot of other guys with no trade or no move clauses that have plenty of term on their contracts, whether it be Pettersson, Besser, some of these guys, Demko. I don't know that we're going to see a full-scale rebuild here. Losing Quinn Hughes will be devastating for this team, there's no doubt. I hope for their sake they get a great return if it happens, but it's going to be a really tough trade to win. I know the Globe and Mail article today referenced the fact that they believe, that the writer for the Globe, that Jim Rutherford still has the confidence of the ownership there for Francesco Aquilini. So, also a lot of debate around who's calling the shots. Is it Rutherford? Is it Alvin? Is it some kind of combination of both? A lot of people around the NHL seemed a little bit confused. Frank Saravalli was saying that he believes Rutherford is the main contact and point person for anything around Hughes, any trade talk. There doesn't seem to be a big belief that because Rutherford has the support of Aquilini, or at least appears to right now, that there's not going to be a regime change. But with the team being at the bottom of the standings in the entire league, some question, is it possible that Rutherford replaces Alvin? We don't have any strong insider leaks to say that that's something that's being seriously considered. But with Rutherford being such a hands-on president and handling a lot of this stuff, it just kind of makes you wonder at some point if ownership will kind of, maybe put pressure on him to change things up a bit. I don't know. It just, when teams are that low in the standings, ownership can't be happy, and sometimes they do want to see some kind of a change. Some new teams also emerged in the Quinn Hughes sweepstakes, with, like I said, numerous insiders weighing in here. We've heard a lot about the Red Wings. We've heard a lot about the Flyers. Of course, the Devils, because of the connection to his brothers. A couple of new teams today, like Washington and Carolina, were both mentioned. I know Friedman had talked about the Capitals. The fact that, the final days of Ovi, they're having another decent season. They're going to want to try to do something special while he's still there. Could they weigh in? The other thing, too, that a lot of teams are going to be using as leverage is that if they can get their hands on Quinn Hughes now, they have a chance to sign him to an 8-year contract. If he plays things out that he either stayed in Vancouver and became a free agent and walked, which I don't see happening, by the way, because I just don't see Vancouver letting that happen, right? And then you get the possibility that if a team acquires Hughes and he doesn't sign, he could still be a free agent, right? So I think anybody who's a contending team and thinks they have a legit chance at a Stanley Cup this year or next is not going to be afraid to pay the asking price to the Canucks for Quinn Hughes, even if they risk losing him if he doesn't re-sign. But the problem with the teams, I think, feel like they have some leverage is that with the contract rules changing with the new CBA, if Quinn Hughes doesn't sign with Vancouver or another team that acquires him this year and he ends up becoming a free agent in 2 seasons, he'll only be able to do a max 6-year contract at that time. So, 6 years then versus getting an 8-year extension, it could be a good chunk of money that he may not be able to turn down, regardless if he loves the idea of playing with his brothers or not, or maybe that ends up being with his brothers in New Jersey. But again, we don't know. There's lots of interest, and a lot of teams are seriously kicking tires on this guy since he's such a good player. And like I said, the Canucks definitely are rumored to want a top young centerman in return, and I would suggest that they're going to want a good D-man as well. I think you're going to have to pony up 2 good young players when it comes to ideally a centerman, a D-man, and then some draft capital or maybe some other prospects too. The Red Wings are really well positioned here, which is why a lot of the NHL insiders still keep going back to them. Could they offer, either Danielson or Casper, one of the two? I think the Red Wings would prefer Danielson. I think they really like Casper and wouldn't preferably want to move him. But let's say you offer Danielson, you're going to have to offer one of your good young D. Preferably, I don't think they'd want to move Edmondson. I don't think they really want to move Sandin Pellikka either, but for an opportunity to get Quinn, they might have to. So, maybe it's Danielson, Sandin Pellikka, or maybe it's Johansson. One of those D are going to have to be in there, and then you're looking at probably multiple picks, including at least 1 first. So it's going to be expensive, but if they're convinced that they might be able to convince him to stay and sign an 8-year deal, clearly he's got ties to Michigan. Family-wise, played at University of Michigan for his college days. Obviously has some American teammates on that team that he's good buddies with, including Dylan Larkin. Obviously he would know guys like DeBrincat, Kane to some extent, and others there too. So I think there's lots for him to like there. It's not playing with his brothers, but I don't know. I mean, I know Jack and Luke probably want him to go to New Jersey, but at the same time, a lot of people have made the argument that Luke could be greatly impacted by Quinn's arrival if that happens because of, the opportunity that he may not get as being the team's number 1 defenseman. But maybe winning together is so, just such a dream for them that maybe that's all they really care about. And if that is what they care about, then I think the odds of them ending up in New Jersey are probably greater. But, the Devils could make a good pitch as well. You're probably looking at, their offer would probably start with Dawson Mercer being the young forward and a D-man. I'm guessing the Vancouver would probably really like Nemec. Whether or not they want to do that, maybe they have to go to Seamus Casey. One of those young D would probably have to be included. New Jersey's probably going to try to push Hamilton's contract out. I don't know if that makes sense to go to Vancouver, though. So, there's certainly a lot of moving parts, but, they do have some young players for sure that could intrigue the Canucks. And because the Canucks, like I said, have a lot of other players, veterans at that, on these longer-term deals is what I meant to say, with trade protection, I don't think we're going to see a teardown. I don't think we're going to see a massive, right down to the studs kind of rebuild here. I think we could easily see another retool and some guys move. I think Sherwood's a goner, Quinn's a goner. How many others? It's kind of hard to say. There's a lot of talk around Garland, but again, it's kind of hard to say where everything's at. But Quinn Hughes is definitely the hot topic, and it sure feels like this is going to get to a point in Vancouver, like we saw with Miller and other situations before that Rutherford's going to be like, okay, we can't take this anymore. It's distracting. We need a solution to this problem, and we know he can be aggressive and he's going to get the best offer and he's going to make it happen. I mean, at the same time, like, you know, he does need to be careful because the return on this deal could have such an impact on the team's future for sure. And they can't screw this one up. It's bad enough they're losing their captain and one of the best players the franchise has ever seen. If they don't get a good return and it looks horrible in a few years, then it's just going to really kill that team long term. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on the Quinn Hughes situation as well as everything else discussed here in today's video. We'll talk about it further in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. It's a place to get all your updates on all things NHL. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.